Welcome back to Second Nature. Joining us today, two great representatives from my favorite outdoor brand, Arcteryx. Josh Herr, the Senior Director of Footwear Design. Did I get that right, Josh?
Nailed it.
Josh, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
And also, Kat Drew, a phenomenal professional athlete and runner, and also the manager of product testing on the footwear side. Kat, welcome to Second Nature.
Thank you. Excited to be here.
Lutzi, where do you want to start here, buddy?
Well, there's a lot of stuff we could really dig into here. What I think is so cool, I mean, obviously there's some big news here with Arcteryx getting into this footwear space, but I think the really cool part that I want to dig into is the athletes having a role in this entire process. And Josh, one of the things that I loved on the video that you guys made, you said, "We know that we're doing prototyping right when the athletes refuse to give back the samples that we sent them." Can you just give me like an overarching thing, because you've probably done this quite a few times where you've kind of gone from concept to ideation to execution on different footwear things. How was this round of making trail footwear maybe a little bit different from stuff you've done in the past?
Yeah, I think a lot of the times people or brands talk about the relationship to athletes, but I personally in my career have never felt it so ingrained into the work like I do at Arcteryx. It's not a separate function; it's part of the whole process. And I kind of joke that Kat and our athletes are kind of our bosses in a way because they do all the insight work. They write the briefs. As a product creation team, we create prototypes and samples, and then they do the testing and the validation. So they're at the beginning and the end, and they kind of, there's a rating in the testing process. So we get essentially a mid-year review and end-year review with the testing feedback that they give us, and so it is really baked into the full process. And sometimes the first we call them P1, prototype one, they're amazing, like the Vertex Speed. And Kat can talk more about that. And then sometimes they're not so great, and we have to kind of reset, and it's like a mad dash till the end to get it right. But it's really the voice of the athletes that's telling us if we've found success or not, or if we still have a long way to go on a project.
Okay, so I feel like we should step back because I assume we're going to speak mostly about this advancement in Arcteryx footwear that's emerged in the last couple of years. Josh, you are in the footwear design office in Portland. I want to talk all about that eventually, but I think before we get to it, we should talk about the evolution and progress that Arcteryx has made on footwear specifically. So maybe you two could both speak both from the product design perspective and from the athlete perspective about the evolution of Arcteryx footwear, because I know it has been a work in progress over the last decade or so. Josh, maybe we can start with you.
Yeah, so Arcteryx footwear was started in 2016, and it was in partnership. We're obviously in the Intersport larger construct, and it was started in support with our friends at Solomon. And a few years ago, the brand saw the opportunity to bring it in-house and really build around it. And so we've expanded the team. We've set this office up here in Portland. We still have our testing up in North Vancouver, where Kat is. We can talk about why that's important to us as well. But we've been building a team down here in Portland in Slabtown, really focused on trying to do footwear the way that Arcteryx does product, which is a really unique challenge and really excites us as a product creation team. So that's the journey we're on. And we had our first launch of those products in 2024 of this new team. As a product team, we're living in the future, working on 27, planning for 2030 even. And so I can say with full confidence that it only gets better and the future is really exciting and bright.
Okay, Kat, so now we need to hear from you for the first time. Maybe you could just share a little bit about your experience working for Arcteryx and specifically the improvement you've seen in the footwear product as we begin to move towards talking about what has been announced recently.
Yeah, definitely. So I started as a footwear product tester. And so That was back in 2018. I got handed the three shoes that were in the line for running at that point. Um, and yeah, they were interesting, and so I got to test them and provide feedback. And one of the shoes was the LD, and so I've got to test from the start of the Norvan LD. And then in 2021, I was signed on as an athlete, and this shoes, the run line was still quite small at that point. We still had I think we had the LD2 at that point. But the type of running I like to do is like fast runnable trails. I really love the California trails. And I didn't feel like I had a shoe that was appropriate for that style of running. And a lot of our other athlete team didn't really feel like they had a shoe that was like a propulsive race shoe, or they just felt like they could fly across the trails. And so, yeah, with athlete feedback and insights, that's where the Cylon came in, and we'll talk about the full run range later. But then I really enjoyed being a part of the design process and being able to be a part of the product team. So I've never been a full-time athlete. I've always had a full-time job, but previously I was in event management and fundraising for nonprofits. But then I saw there was a potential opportunity on the footwear team. So I was able to weasel my way in and be able to get employed. And so now it was kind of cool because during that time, um, we were working of getting signed on as an employee. We were working on the LD4, and so I've been able to kind of see that shoot full cycle from Proto One, and then now that it launched a couple weeks ago. Yeah, it's been a fun journey to be on.
I'm really fascinated about this sort of hybrid role that you had where you came in essentially to work for Arcteryx and then became an athlete. I'm assuming when everything was obvious it was going to be launching and coming out, it was time to go loud with the partnership and sort of build it out. But was that always sort of the plan from when you started there, thinking that? I mean, just from like a career standpoint for you, I think a lot of people are sort of balancing both sides of it where they're trying to do the pro athlete thing, but also need to sort of keep the lights on. Was that an intentional move on your part of, hey, I think this might be for my running career and for my real career, like the perfect fit?
I think it was maybe at the back of my mind, but I was definitely, I didn't know if it would be possible because didn't have experience in the apparel industry or footwear industry. I was in events. So, yeah, I think like I definitely signed on with the specific idea of being an athlete, but then having my full-time job outside of Arcteryx. And then when I kind of realized that it was a possibility to do a complete 180 in my career, I was quick to jump at it because I didn't want to do events anymore. And yeah, it's been an amazing opportunity. It's been a huge learning experience, but being able to be a part of the team and learn about the design and development process of footwear specifically has been really great. And I think I've been on employed for about a year and a half, so it's still like quite new.
Yeah.
Still feel very fresh.
Lucy, did you read Matt Trappy's newsletter this week where he talks about this? The athlete employee opportunity?
Yeah, there's so many things that are kind of coming up here, right? Like there's so many opportunities that are jumping in. And you and I have talked about this in other podcasts too, of sort of how to get your foot in the door of the outdoor industry and how you can sort of raise your hand. And, in Kat's case, it sounds like you saw an opportunity to sort of get your foot in the door with you had relevant experience as an athlete, and listening to how Josh even talks about how the athletes are sort of the bosses of the product development process, that you brought in such an interesting mix of ability and insight that you're able to do so much within the brand well beyond what would have been expected of you. I think that's such a cool way to kind of approach the whole thing.
There's other athletes too, like Adam Campbell's on our footwear team too, so he brings incredible insights and experience. And then we have Alana Yip, who's world class climber, and she's on our advanced concept team. And Greg Hill he's the chief stoke officer, is what he calls himself. So he gets the senior leadership team. He just takes them out and into the mountains so they can experience what we all do,
Oh my
which is a
God.
huge thing for the brand.
We got to have him on the podcast, Lucy. The
I
chief
know.
stoke officer at Arcteryx. Come
Yeah.
on, that's got to be the best job in the industry. I'm glad you shouted out Adam Campbell, longtime friend of mine. I think he's been an Arcteryx athlete for almost 20 years and now sort of assuming a real position within the company as more of an employee. It's a great model. And also it's being utilized by David Laney, who's working in a sales role mostly with Kraft, his sponsor, Corinne Malcolm, we know, friend of the pod, who just assumed a similar role like this at Hoka. So a fun thing for our audience to monitor going forward. And as Lucy said, a great, just example of people who are able to evolve with a brand and contribute in multiple different ways. Kat, yourself performing as an athlete, wearing the Arcteryx logo, using the products, proving the concept, and then also bringing those insights into your role. Josh, coming back to you, I think it would be great to talk about the setting up of the footwear design office in Portland. Aaron and I have talked about this in previous episodes, but it's been a little while. So maybe you can just share the origin story of getting that office off the ground, why it was important to co-locate your team physically in Portland away from the corporate headquarters in Vancouver.
Yeah, so Ovidio Garcia, was really the one who was tasked on setting this office up, and I think he joined the company about 3 or 4 years ago. So in about 2020, there was a bit of a brand leadership reset, and in that time, they brought in Katie Becker, who is our chief creative officer. And Katie has experience in footwear, and I think with that knowledge, she thought, I think we could do this a little bit more in an Arcteryx way and set this up in-house. And so she's the one who really has been leading footwear from a leadership point of view, and then brought in Ovi, and Ovi's been the person who's been boots on the ground, kind of setting up this office from a physical space, but then also from a team point of view. And they made the decision that, Portland it's still in the Pacific Northwest, so it still carries that heart that is so important to Arcteryx, but it's a little more centralized in the footwear industry. So building a team of talent would be a little bit easier in doing that. And so that was a lot of the reason why Portland was chosen. And building this team, we've really been looking for experts in the footwear industry, blending that with the brand's knowledge of the outdoor industry, and really looking to build a bit of a blend of talent from prior experiences and knowledges, and really try to not have too much of a homogenized team, but a blended experience between industries and experiences.
You've talked about sort of the Arcteryx way a handful of times, and one of the things you said earlier was that you approached footwear like you approached product. Can you give a little bit more insight into what that actually looks like and how you approach product, I guess?
Yeah, I think that it's for myself, and I'd say the majority of the team or most of the team, it's what really excited us about this opportunity. I think if you look at the way that historically Arcteryx has approached gear, there's a level of obsession around functionality and quality that doesn't exist in footwear. There's a space there that's very open, and so at least for me personally, when I got the call about this opportunity, it was immediately like, oh my God, like if they really do this the way that Arcteryx does this, it will mean something completely new for footwear. And I think we're all really motivated in bringing that to life. And that's the journey that we're on. And it's not going to be a 1 year thing. It's not going to be a 3 year thing. It's a long journey to get to the level of quality that in the way that Arcteryx builds product. And when I talk about that, there's tenets of design that we have as a brand, and they're really about functionality, building the most functional product, really having a super sharp point on the athlete need. There's a level of principle in that I have never experienced in my career. Like there's things that we do that we know are more costly or that be more of a sharp point that other brands might avoid, but we confidently go into because we believe in that authenticity. So from a functionality point of view, like it's the most important thing. Never hear any conversation other than that. And then a level of beauty and reduction in the product. And so, and that is also linked to functionality. And so we try to take off all the gack, strip all the shit off that we don't need because it's not only a distraction to athletes who are out in the mountain, it's also a potential failure point if there's things that are failing that don't need to be there. So it is, we see that in our processes. We're constantly like, do we actually need this? Or could we do this with less? And we're constantly taking away as much as possible. And so I think building into quality, design, functionality in the way that Arcteryx does, if we continue to do that in footwear, we will be in a space of our own.
Goosebumps. Josh, I'd love to stick with you for a second and have you go one level deeper because Arcteryx is synonymous with quality. And so if you could take us into some of these conversations where, especially as it relates to footwear, your excitement of like, oh my gosh, if Arcteryx goes into this with the Arcteryx mindset, they are going to make an impact in the footwear industry. Like if there's a practical example of something that came to market that fits that framework, I'm sure the audience would be interested to hear.
Yeah. I think that so the brand uses the word obsession a lot. And it's a really scary word to throw around a design studio because, or any product creation, because by trade, a lot of designers and product people who work in product creation are already obsessive. And so it kind of emboldens us to go really deep. And I think that is the journey that we're realizing that we're on as a team, is that to do something in an Arcteryx way or a special way means going deep in a way that most of us haven't had to do in our careers. An example I can give you is I was just in Asia for a week because I've been working on a yarn for the past year. And I think we probably got another 2 years on that yarn. And like I've never spent that level of obsessiveness. Like we joke as a design team that like, this started as a material idea. I realized I need to go to the yarn, and then I need to go to the yarn construction level, and I actually need to go to the polymer level. And like the joke with the team is like, I think I'm going to find God soon. Like we have to go so deep to do something so meaningful and new that it means that we have to turn over rocks that we've always kind of thought were just givens. Like this is just how it is. And then we're like, actually, no. And so like as a design team, we talk a lot about how we're kind of coming to a place where we're realizing that there's so many things to challenge and there's so many things that we don't know. It's actually really exciting because we're challenging conventional things that we thought were just industry standard. And we're like, actually, I don't think that needs to be that way. But it's kind of, it can be a little overwhelming and exhausting at times because then you start to see all the opportunities that exist and it challenges. It's like, oh, actually, we have this new yarn, but there's not an appropriate testing mechanism currently for how to test this. And so we're having to actually even revisit our testing standards and our lab standards and build new machines for how to test this new idea. And it's kind of like one small idea can become a massive project. That's and I think everyone on the team has at least one of these like passion projects that they're really obsessively diving into, and it's really cool to see. It's almost an academic approach to the way that we're going about product. And I think the thing that's really cool is that we really have authority from our leadership to not put stuff out that we don't feel good about. And so, and that's also...
Is that unusual in this space?
In my experience, It's very unusual. And so there's been times where we're like, this could be better. Let's just hold it back a season,
Mm.
or let's hold it back a year. And there's stories about this one shoe that had a stitch line that our leadership didn't like, and they're like, it's being held back. Or it can be a detail level, it can be a functional level, but there's not this desire to commercialize a ton. And Katie, our chief creative officer, is always on us about just like, if it's not ready, just wait. It's fine. And yeah, that's really unique.
Could you go a little deeper on the relationship with the athletes specifically? Because when you were talking about that idea of like, I'm going to come out with this brand new yarn that's going to be part of the shoes, how do you sort of qualify that with Kat and the team of athletes so that you don't spend 3 years and have the athletes put it on and be like, this sucks? Like, then what? Kat, feel free to jump in on that one
Yeah,
too.
yeah. Maybe we could start with Kat and come back to you, Josh. Yeah.
Well, I think one of the things is we're already running testing that has to do with this yarn to kind of set the stage and figure out like from a like a footwear testing perspective and figure out what's working and what's not before we even get the yarn. And just keeping the athletes in the loop and our testers of what's coming down the pipeline. And then they get the athletes get the shoes from the very start, which is very I think it's quite unusual for some brands. But we have men's and women's sample sizes. We test both men's and women's. And yeah, they're involved right from the get-go. So
Kat, do you also
yes.
want to talk about the how we open sample sizes? 'Cause it's not always a standardized size. Sometimes we do it for specific athletes.
Yeah, we did this. We started this actually with the Vertex Speed and the Norvan LD4. And this is when the brand decided they wanted to start with 2 athlete muses per shoe. And they chose Emma Cook Clark and Eric Carter for the Vertex Speed. And then Adam and I for the Norvan LD4. And so they sent the sample sizes were done in, or the sizes were done in our sizes, and we were involved right from prototype one. And so Eric and Emma were actually handed prototype one, and this was one of those cases where they didn't want to give the prototypes back, and they had like very little feedback, negative feedback on the shoe. Right from prototype one. And we were really, really excited about this shoe. So we are great. That's awesome. And there's been tweaks along the way. It's launching this week. And then in the LD4 case, Adam and I were handed the shoe. This was prototype one, and it wasn't the case that we loved it. We were happy to give it back. To
Wow.
No, this is
be,
great.
Shots
This is
fired.
great. You got to stay real on Second Nature. Love it.
I asked Ovi if I was allowed to say
Yeah.
that, and he said it's fine. But and we both of us, Adam, I think had been working on contract at that point on the footwear team, but I wasn't an employee. So, anyways, I actually gained employment halfway through that shoe. So then, and then, yeah, that one's definitely, the LD4 has definitely been more of a journey. We had a thing we called tongue gate, where we had a huge thing with the tongue, tongue construction. But this is what Josh is talking about with the obsession. And we go into these little details and we want to make sure that it's working the right way for the athlete. Who's going to be wearing it. So yeah, we'll do rounds outside of the official prototype round to just test tongues. And yeah, it's definitely a process, but then we get to a shoe that we're excited to launch and everyone feels really confident in.
Could you go back? You said something earlier about the athlete muse. Can you give us a little bit more detail on like what is that?
Yeah, so it's the while we're briefing in a product, we'll decide or choose an athlete or two who we want to kind of use as the inspiration for the shoe. And we actually choose an athlete and we also choose a trail or type of terrain for inspiration, just so the design team can really get a good idea of what we're designing for. So, for example, for the LD4, the athlete muses were myself and Adam, because we do that type of running a lot. And then the trail or route inspiration was what's known as the Baden Powell Trail. It's in the North Vancouver. There's a race called the Neenacker that runs along it. It's about 30 miles, 50-kilometer
A
trail.
beautiful trail. A beautiful
Very
trail. Gary
beautiful.
Robbins took me on a run there.
Yeah, yeah. And so mixed terrain, there's some really technical bits and some flowy single track, really what the shoe's designed to perform at. So yeah, and it just gives our design and development team a chance to like really see what this shoe is specifically for, and then also have two focus athletes to run ideas off of and test the shoe.
Josh, anything you want to contribute to this conversation?
Yeah, no, just
Okay.
the missions. I think that, the missions that we highlight and the athletes that we choose really help us contextualize what we're doing. And I think one of the things that we're always really grateful as a product creation team is the specificity of what we're doing, because it creates so much clarity. And so sometimes we say like specific is terrific because it really helps us really focus on what the problem is to solve and what success looks like. And so these kind of worlds and these missions that we paint really help us focus in on the problems to solve.
So interesting. All right, I have a two-part question that I think is probably best for you, Josh. It was just announced that for the first time ever, arcteryx cracked the 2 billion in revenue mark, which is, I'm sure, a big moment in the history of the brand, even if it feels like there's still a lot of room to grow. I was a North Face athlete for a long time, and it took them forever to figure out their footwear. I know it's been a process for arcteryx too. So my question for you is, number one, why is footwear hard to figure out when you're an apparel first brand? And number two, what does having a good footwear product mean for the business? Right? Because I know North Face's brand president recently said they plan to triple their footwear sales in the near future, which is going to, lead to obviously massive growth for the business itself for the North Face. I wonder if you guys think about things similarly.
I'm not so familiar about their positioning, their plans, but I will say that, you know, as a footwear team, we love learning from apparel or hard goods, like um, the way that our harness team works is incredible. The way that our pack team works is incredible. The way that apparel, and they're all very unique in the way that they think and they build product. And so we draw a lot of inspiration from that in the footwear space. And we actually think that that's our unique way into footwear, as well as leaning into those spaces a little bit more and approaching it in the way that they do. I'd like to think also that we provide some inspiration to them as well in the way that we think. A lot of us have come from other companies, and so there's a lot of things that we consciously talk about unlearning, because we're not sure if this serves us here. Like this former knowledge, this is relevant and this isn't. And these are standards that we want to maintain, and these aren't. And so I think the brand views us as a way to infuse an additional way of thinking into the other product categories as well. And I think that's a big part of why the brand wants to push footwear, because there's a different type of technicality that we bring to the table that the other categories can learn from, just like we're learning from them as well. As far as the growth of the brand, I think if I'm being really honest, I don't think it's the thing that really motivates us internally. When they make those announcements, it's the team's kind of like, yeah, cool. I think what really stokes us is making incredible product that has a real sharp point, and we believe that if we keep focusing on that, it'll always resonate with people, because at the end of the day, people really want authenticity. So if we keep that as our North Star, I'm pretty confident that people will continue to gravitate to the brand.
Josh, in endurance sport, we have a term of art that is process over outcome. you're pretty much articulating that from a brand side too.
Yeah, I think if you get too hung up on like expectations about growth, you lose the learning opportunity and the fun of the whole activity itself.
I love it.
We do talk about, I mean, it's something, and maybe Kat, you can talk about this too, having the experience of both, is like we talk about the design process, we want to be inspired by the athlete process and the way that they work and their obsession and commitment is also what we want to live in the way that we create product as well. I don't know if Kat, you have any. No, I'm asking the questions. I'm sorry, but
It's a
Kat,
conversation. All
yeah.
good. Yeah, Kat, I think one of the things that I'm really interested about is learning about the sort of onboarding of the team through the eyes of the athletes. And I think that's sort of in line with where Josh was trying to go too, is what does that actually tactically look like when you and the team are sitting down with these designers? How do you tell them what it's like to run really fast through the mountains? How do you get that across? And what does that actually look like? Is it a workshop? Is it a meeting? Is it just a digest email that's going to take them a week to get through? Like, what does this actually look like when you're tactically onboarding a team like this?
Um, I think it's there's not like a specific onboarding, and you're talking like the team learning about at like the athlete
Yeah, like
process.
you're basically brain dumping everything you know about trail running into this group of designers that may have never done anything more than hike.
Yeah, I think it's a definitely it's a process. And so that now that they have Adam and I on the team, they kind of get little tidbits like all the time. And we'll be in meetings. We have what we call our product triad meetings, and we'll be talking about the Cylon, and what running a long distance trail race is like. And then they have me there to share some really good experiences about trail races and some really bad. And then we're able to share on the spot um, problems we run into while we're out on really long runs. So they really have us at our fingertips. And then in terms of the broader athlete team, we'll have a variety of different types of insight sessions. So we'll do virtual sessions like this. Or we go and immerse the design team into an environment with athletes. We go to Chamonix. A couple of our designers went last year, and myself, and we spent a few days in the mountains with our athletes. So they got to actually experience alpine ridge climbing with our athlete team. And I think those are the moments where we're out in the field with the teams together, where you really get the best insights. I still haven't been able to take any of our team members on an ultra yet, but little do they know.
Hey, as luck would have it, Josh, I host an ultra outside of Portland next weekend, Gorge Waterfalls. We'll see you there, okay, buddy?
Oh, I think there's something on my schedule. I think.
Very cool. So, Kat, I'm assuming that also you manage the product testing process of people who are not professional athletes. So maybe you could bring us into that process, because I'm sure you gather unique insights from the people who are pushing these products to their limit versus the people who are going out there as weekend warriors or just sort of like passionate trail users. Is there any similarity or difference between the feedback they provide?
Yeah, so we're fortunate. A lot of our testers are up here in North Vancouver. We design for the coastal mountains, so we test in the coastal mountains. And we have a ton of employees at Arcteryx who are core users. So they get to help me do a lot of the product testing as well. So we like to do a mixture of both. Our athletes get the shoes, and then we get the weekend warriors, and then also kind of a group of people who are not professional athletes, but they're high level athletes as well. So we have a broad pool of people. So we have a wide range of feedback, but it's always kind of tailored back to what the athlete needs and prefers. But there's definitely a balance, and there's never I can't really think of a point where there is like huge differences in in the product. Like I think when the athlete gets what they need and need for their outcome of the shoe, it works for the weekend warrior.
What, I don't know, maybe this is a little bit of a simple question, but how do you keep these prototypes under wraps? Because obviously, if you're out running on the trails, anybody can see these. And if you're watching this podcast on YouTube, you've seen some of the first prototypes. But when they do this with cars, they like cover the whole car in like a wrap. You can't really do that with a pair of shoes. I guess you could wear gaiters, but do you worry about people seeing the prototype Arcteryx trail shoe on out in public, or do you think about that at all? Does it bother you?
Lucy, do you know the Protos of the Gram Instagram account?
Uh-uh.
Oh man, that's where all the big leaks go. That's
I'm
where all
in.
the big leaks go. Anyway, Kat, I'd love to hear about.
We
Yeah.
we don't we want to generate that interest. We don't get people to cover their shoes in saran wrap or anything. Sometimes we get prototypes and they're the brightest color you've ever seen. We're like, well, this isn't subtle at all. um, but yeah, we don't like put huge logos on them, but there's still logos on our prototypes. But yeah, we like to tease a bit when people are out there.
Yeah, go ahead, Josh. I'd love to hear from you on this too, because especially as you're thinking about the technology, the sharp point of differentiation, there probably is some secrecy that you want to adhere to.
Yeah. I think there's sometimes where it also would be really hard to tell what we're testing. So it might be taking like a shoe and modifying the outsole in 3 different ways, and we're testing that. Or we're changing the material, or we're changing the midsole compound. Like for the Silent 2 that we're working on, we took the Silent 1 midsole and opened it in a various amount of midsole compounds. And so there's Silent 1s out there that people think are just normal Silents, but they actually have the Silent 2 midsole in there. And so, and if someone was able to like figure that out, I would be like, you're hired. That
Yeah.
would be amazing to have people that knowledgeable about the details and the ingredients that we're also testing.
So, Kat, maybe sticking with you for a sec. One thing that I'd love to hear, you said you design for the coastal mountains, you test in the coastal mountains, and Arcteryx, of course, was born in Vancouver, British Columbia, and where the office is. I mean, your steps from, it's one of the most beautiful, spectacular places in the world. I wonder how that infects the brand culturally, if you know what I mean. Like, I'm sure there's a pride of place, and a lot of the people who work at the brand probably grew up in British Columbia or, the surrounding areas. Is there anything about the significance of the place that is significant for the brand, the culture, the products, etc.?
Definitely. I think one of the huge things about the brand is to live it. We have this big thing called Live It, and it's people who live and breathe the outdoor life. And you can really feel that when you're in the office. There's people skiing and climbing and running. Yeah, everyone's that's people's core value for the most part. So I think that comes through in the product that's made. It's not just that the athletes are doing all this stuff, but a lot of the employees are immersed in the product as well. And then in the culture of the company, they we have these things called no wasted days where it'll snow a lot one day in the coastal mountains, and they're like, okay, everyone has a day off tomorrow. Go do a live it. So you get to go and do your thing in the mountains or wherever that may be. So I think it's a really important part of the brand, and I think it makes people feel really proud to work there. And it makes people feel valued as well working there, because the thing they like to do outside of work is really appreciated at work.
You have an army of product testers as well, from what it sounds like, and that's got to be, I don't know, Josh, do you sort of, being down in Portland in the office here, imagine if you were in Vancouver, the amount of people just coming by to knock on your desk with product feedback on a daily basis would probably be overwhelming. So to have the design center down there is maybe a bit of a blessing as well. Does that track?
It does track a little. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that, but it is the thing I think there's I've been at the company now a year and a half, and something I always say to Katie, and I'm like, what is this place? It's the culture here is really unique in my experience, and I'm always trying to like figure out what it is because I want to make sure that we protect it and actually we amplify it even down here in the footwear office. And she's like, it's really something you have to experience. She's like, I know you want like a PowerPoint or you want a presentation, but she's like, it's just something you have to experience. And it's something that I think we're all continually learning about, even the people in North Vancouver, about what makes us special and really trying to like hold that tight. And for us, it's so cool to get to go up to North Vancouver. It's such a unique office. The design floor is unlike anything I've ever seen. It's just packed with machines and people prototyping and people building. And we go up there as a footwear team and we just absorb as much as possible. We meet with like incredible apparel pattern makers and we're like, how would you pattern the foot? This is just a part of the body. Like, what would you do? And you're like, oh my God, I never thought of that. Like, that's such a different way of thinking about this. And we absorb, and then we kind of come down here and we just get to like hide and build it. And at the same time, I think we've become like the brand's favorite off-site, on-site location. Like we're hosting like an event here like every week of like people from North Van that are like just want to come down and hide away and work as a team. And so there's always something happening here from people from either the Tokyo Creation office, which we just recently opened, to North Vancouver, or meeting with athletes. We have an athlete summit happening here. What is it, next week? All the run athletes are coming here. Kat, so this place is kind of almost like a conference center at times, which is kind of cool because
Josh,
yeah.
Yeah, I know where your office is. I often will just poach that Wi-Fi there in the lobby. That's my favorite place to work in Portland.
Knock.
Yes.
Knock.
My in-laws live there and they have very bad Wi-Fi up on Skyline. And so I always come and have a coffee and poach the Wi-Fi there on the internet. But yeah, I'll come.
We just now got the fourth floor of this building too, so
All right.
yeah, we'd love to come on by.
Well, I'll be in town next week. Maybe Aaron Luzzi and I will come see what you guys are working on. But Josh, I want to stick with you for a second. You mentioned, I think it's Katie a couple of times, the chief creative officer. Is it normal that the product org sits underneath the chief creative officer? To me, that feels like it's different too.
Yeah, I'd say as a whole, like the way that the brand structurally sets things up sometimes it defies like any prior logic that I might have. And at first I'm like, what is going on here? But then after a while you're like, actually this makes tons of sense, and this might just be the state that we're in right now and it needs to evolve. And they're very organic in the way that things are set up and structured. And I think that there's kind of a beauty to that, organizationally putting things where they need to be for the moment that organization is in. It's a cool thing. And so Katie's been a great advocate for footwear, and she had, like I said, she had prior footwear knowledge and was able to really kind of like drive us kind of to where we are now and making sure that we're staying focused on authenticity.
It does seem like there's a lot of knowledge coming from a lot of different places, from different, parts of the footwear industry, really kind of coalescing around this project specifically. One of the things that we see in a lot of other sports, whether it's, skate or basketball or, whatever, is this idea of the signature shoe, right? The LeBron James shoe or whatever you want to call it. I haven't seen it a whole lot in trail running, and I'd be curious, just, you don't have to commit to anything at all here, but what do you think about it just as a general point of, do you think the signature shoe in trail running is something that should exist?
Kat?
The Herr Kat Drew coming from Arcteryx soon. Yeah.
Yeah.
She's been trying every meeting we have, she's like, when am I getting my own shoe? She like yells at us, and
Yeah. It's the only reason I'm here.
I mean, the Courtney Dauwalter shoe instantly sold out when Solomon created that colorway. And so I'm surprised that more brands haven't sort of picked up and run with it, but I've got to imagine there's more calculus to it than just like athlete plus shoe equals sales. But I don't know, just kind of curious from the other side of it if there's a reason why not. I mean, obviously you guys are still pretty early on in the product launch and life cycle and everything, but just as sort of a general thought, do you think there's a reason why this hasn't become more common in this space specifically?
I think we generally do things that have value. And so if there's a functional value or if it's actually adding value to the product, that's what we do. So I think if there was a need from an athlete point of view that was unique and added value to the product, it's certainly something that we would explore. It's, to be honest, it's something that we've discussed. We're really careful and cautious about how much product we put out. We really have a goal of having a really tight quiver of shoes. We don't want to have a big range. And so if there's a way that we can continue to increase our athlete relationship and partnership in a way that's meaningful to the greater range, we would absolutely do it.
Sticking with the athlete thing for a second, Kat, I had a call with Adam Campbell, Justin Sweeney, and DK.
Hmm.
Is that the right initials? I don't know.
Yeah,
His
DK.
DK.
Daniel.
It's Daniel. Okay.
Yeah.
So anyway, I know Arcteryx is thinking about how to, enhance the athlete experience and the athlete roster specific to trail running. I don't know if there's anything you want to share about that or ways in which the athlete team has evolved in your tenure working with the brand, both as an athlete and now as an employee too.
Yeah, I think it just kind of goes hand in hand with the development and evolution of the shoes. Like the run team started really small with it just being Adam. And it's now as we get this bigger run shoe line and that um, a fuller quiver, I think that's when they're realizing, okay, let's expand the run team more. Um, and also that's just where trail running's just exploding at the moment as well. And Arcteryx is realizing that. And yeah, and it's a time where it makes sense to expand the run team.
Which he did also with the addition of Jasmine Lothar this year, which
Hmm.
was
Exactly.
a massive get from a talent perspective.
I've got to imagine it's challenging when you have, I mean, you've got the apparel and you've got the footwear where I can't imagine you would sign someone just for footwear at this stage, right? They've got to be sort of head to toe. So you
Oh, of
have to be
course. Yeah.
a bit more committed to it. I guess the question I want to ask Josh is how do you then connect those dots to make sure this stuff is all cohesive? Because you might be going down this yarn pathway, for example, and the apparel team might be going the opposite of yarn. How do you pull all these different things together? Because now you've got stakeholders in the athlete, marketing team, product team, materials team, right? How does that come together? Is that one of the core reasons why you're sort of structured under the creative lead?
Yeah, I think that's one of the reasons, but it's a really good point, Aaron. Like that, we talk about the system of dress at Arcteryx and really looking at the kit that someone needs for a mission, and then how those products work together and the relationship together. So we spend a lot of time on that topic, and we have this part of our creation process at the beginning of a season called the maker phase, and we're building and prototyping in-house solutions, and we're looking at them collectively across different product categories, so packs, harnesses, apparel, and footwear. Like this yarn thing that I'm working on, now apparel and packs are also looking into that space, and so we keep each other informed. It's, as a designer, like I was kind of referencing earlier, it's really inspiring to see the way that those other teams work, and we constantly are taking from that resource, that internal knowledge pool that exists and is looking at product in maybe a unique way to footwear. So it's important to the athletes that the kit is seamless, but also from a creation point of view, there's a lot of inspiration looking across product categories.
Awesome. Josh, I felt like it was pretty significant you saying that you're cautious about the amount of product that you put out. And I'm realizing that we should probably talk specifically about the product. Lucy, you can hold up the pair of shoes that they sent you there.
Ooh, yeah, sure can. Yeah,
So
if you're
What do
maybe,
you
not
got?
watching,
yeah.
Oh,
So
nice.
Nice.
check me out.
that is a beautiful looking shoe. So, Josh, maybe you could just speak specifically about the shoes that were announced recently and the specific application that they serve and how that fits into this philosophy of being cautious about the amount of product you release.
Yeah, I think we've spent a lot of time on our product construct, like an obsessive level amount of time on like really thinking about the most essential quiver of footwear that we can put out. Because again, we want to have like a really sharp point, and be really clear on what a product's use case is. So um, in the run space specifically, actually is our whole range. We really look at kind of like um, technical terrain. We kind of look at two triangles. So we have technical terrain and really technical environments where you're having to slow down because the trail is undefined. It might be rocky and rooty. You're having to use your hand, probably a little bit higher on the climb side. Moving down to another triangle, which represents speed, and your ability to move quickly through an environment. And so on this side, you have more well-defined paths and trails, which are allowing the athlete to move quickly through terrain. And really everything kind of comes down to these double triangles. I don't know if I'm like giving out our whole structure to the industry, but it's fine, whatever. Um, I might get in trouble for this. So when we look at run, we think about our run range in that same way. And so on the technical side of run, where the terrain becomes a little bit more like climbing, we have Vertex Speed, which just launched. And so in this, we're looking at more precision in the forefoot. We have a dual midsole compound to have a little bit more density in the forefoot for that precision, but more cushion in the heel for runnability. In the tread, you can see more traditional run traction in the heel, more traditional climb traction in the forefoot for a little bit more grip, where in the heel we're trying to penetrate a little bit more. And then even that hybridization goes into the upper. So we're using a blend of knits for comfort and wovens for durability and structure, or durability and protection. And so that's on the technical side, in technical terrain. On the complete opposite side, we have our Silent One, which is to be used in places where the trails are more defined. Propulsion is more of an opportunity because you're not moving in technical terrain. We can use slightly higher stack heights, more innovative midsole compounds, and a more extreme rocker to move through those environments. You don't have to worry about stability. And then in the middle, we have the Norvan, which is kind of, we talk about our one shoe for every adventure. And so this kind of sits between the two and is a little bit more of your everyday trail running shoe. So those are the three key running families that we have. We do dimensionalize these. And so we might do something like this Friend that's going to come out in the fall, which is the Norvan Nivalis, which is, yeah, I know, it's so good.
It's beautiful.
So good. I know. And so this is meant for running through cold and winter conditions, and is a part of the Norvan family, but we're dimensionalizing it through the lens of conditions that an athlete might face in the mountains. So there is depth to these, but again, the goal is not to have a big sloppy range, but a really clear point of view. And when people walk up to the wall and they say, "I need a running shoe," that we can clearly tell our guests what type of product that they need.
Awesome. Kat, do you want to share your perspective on that as an athlete? Like to have the specific weapon for the specific application, especially as you mentioned, the Silent being more of the runnable trail shoe that you enjoy?
Yeah, it's been really great to see the line expand. And then especially with the Cylon, I think a lot of our athletes were really excited when that shoe came out and they're like, "Oh, this is like they feel like they can run fast in that shoe. Um, I had done Javelina 100 miler in the LD3s and it just destroyed my feet. Or sorry, the LD3s. And so yeah, getting the Cylon, and then with the addition of the Vertex Speed to have those shoes at each end of the spectrum, um, really, because a lot of our athletes specialize in different things. Like we have Emma and Eric who are up in the scrambling in the mountains. Um, is super important as a brand, and also as we expand the athlete team. But that being said, Emma also ran the World Sky Series, Sky Running Series in the LD4, and won that race. So we have athletes that can obviously take all the shoes to their limits, but while they're still being designed for a very specific use case.
I mean, what a dream scenario, honestly. I don't have a question here, but like, I just feel like, hey, here's this like well-established outdoor brand that does awesome high quality stuff. Would you like to help us make really awesome shoes? Yeah, sounds great. Sign me up, right? I mean, this must have been the easiest yes of your life, I've got to imagine, right?
Yeah, I think that this place might have ruined me. Like I don't.
Where did you work before, Josh? Did I miss this?
I was at Adidas for 20 years, um,
Wow.
but I think it'd be really hard to go somewhere else after this. And this is not like smoke because I'm talking to someone external, but like I genuinely believe I have the coolest job in the industry. Like I don't know how you could come up with something better. And the stoke on the team is really high because we really believe in this opportunity.
And you have the VP of Stoke, right? Did I get that right?
The chief
Chief
Stoke
Stoke
officer.
Officer.
Come on.
Stoke
That's
officer.
high. That's higher.
You gave him a demotion, Lutzi.
I'll be the senior manager of Stoke.
Yes, yes.
You're hired.
Yeah. Well, unless there's anything else, it feels like a perfect transition to BPC, but we appreciate you guys sharing so much about this footwear project. I haven't used the product myself, but it looks beautiful. And yeah, just congratulations from everything I've heard. It's been a massive step in the right direction from just like a product quality and functionality perspective. So congrats to you both. You guys are our guests. We end all of our shows with the brand product content segment. You're at least loosely prepared for this. So maybe Kat, you can get us started. Something that's inspiring you, whether it's, related to brands, products, or content. That's our loose rubric or framework for our closing segment here.
Well, I recently got into climbing um, to expand my sports that I do, but I don't know if I have anything specific that I can give. But it's been really cool getting to use new product because I've been a runner forever, and just being able to dive um, into new stuff and learn something new. So that's my panic response on that.
Climbing. All right.
Climbing, yeah.
Awesome. Josh, you want to go next?
I had one, but now Kat's inspired me to. I recently have converted from being a terrible snowboarder to a terrible skier, and so that's been really fun doing it with my wife and my two kids, and just learning something new as a family has been really exciting and inspiring. But the answer I was going to give is, I think the when I think about content, the book that I think about the most is *Sapiens*. I think it's the best marketing book and book for understanding humans and intrinsic motivation, and I think about that book so often.
A great book. Yuval Harari.
I'll jump in next to follow up on that point of continuous learning. I want to shout out the Modern Elder Academy. It's got kind of a weird name, but the principle of it is basically this idea of people between the ages of like 40 to 70 who are looking for the second mountain to climb in their lives. They talk a lot about this idea of, instead of having a midlife crisis, you should have a midlife chrysalis. And this Modern Elder Academy is exactly that. It kind of like prepares you for that next mountain. And our good friend and friend of the pod and friend in real life, Rebecca Rush, is actually going to be one of the guest speakers at the academy coming up here soon. I'm going to put a link in the show notes for that one. But this idea of going somewhere for a week, they have all kinds of guest lecturers that come in that are like on the level of Rebecca Rush. I think Oprah was even there at one point. I mean, lots of really cool stuff there. But this idea of climbing the second mountain in your life, you accomplished one thing and then you hit your 40s and you have this moment of like, now what do I do with all these, skills and everything else? But I also have a little bit more time to focus in on something. I think this might be the answer actually of how we figure it out for those of us who haven't picked up their second mountain just yet. So yeah, Modern Elder Academy.
I'm still working on my first mountain.
Yeah.
Congrats to being your second. That's
Yeah.
great.
Well, yeah, speaking of which, and just, I guess, building off everybody's answer here, you got to go read The Second Mountain. That was a BPC for me recently. We're going to talk about something else that David Brooks wrote in a future podcast, but my contribution today is Rick Rubin's new Substack. As everybody knows, because I've talked about it on the podcast a million times, Rick Rubin's book, The Creative Act, had a huge impact on me. As we've talked about, the chief creative officer at Arcteryx, leading a lot of the product that you guys are working on. I feel like maybe there's an elegant closing sentiment here of like the importance of creativity in everything that we do. And Rick Rubin is sort of the muse, again, another callback here for many creative people. And he has such a gift of inspiring you to think about your creative process in a new way to help you when you're stuck. His book is phenomenal. His podcast is amazing. And now he's adding a newsletter on Substack. So you can go subscribe to it. It's rickrubin.substack.com. He's only sent a couple short missives so far, but I'm very much looking forward to receiving those directly into my inbox on what appears to be a weekly cadence going forward. So pretty awesome.
Instant subscribe.
100%. Read front to back every single week, no matter what. That's definitely going to be my process. Awesome. Well, Josh, Kat, thank you guys so much for coming on Second Nature. So fun to learn a little bit more about your guys' creative process. And congrats again on all the success on the footwear side of things. And Kat, what do you have coming up? What are you racing this season?
Well, I just I ran a Tarawera and it wasn't a great experience. I had to DNF. So I'm just recovering from that and mentally and trying to figure out what to do next. So well, stay tuned for that.
That's right. Bummer. I didn't see you there. I was at Tarawera.
Yeah, I was pretty incognito for that whole thing.
Yeah. All right. Well, sorry to hear that and good luck with the rest of your season. Hey, Josh. Yeah. Maybe offline we'll set up a time to come say what's up at the office.
Yeah, come by for a coffee.
All right. Thank you guys so much for coming on the show.